The trust that never returned. What if the relationship between two major civilizations was broken so deeply that even after nearly 2 centuries, the trust never fully returned? Today, tensions between China and the Western world dominate global headlines. From trade wars and technology restrictions to military tensions in Asia, the relationship appears increasingly strained. To many observers, these disputes look like ordinary geopolitical competition between powerful nations. However, from China's perspective, the roots of this distrust stretch far deeper into history. Chinese scholars and political leaders often trace the origins of this strained relationship back to a period known as the Century of Humiliation, a time when China was repeatedly defeated, pressured, and controlled by foreign powers. This historical memory continues to influence how China views Western countries today. Understanding this perspective is essential for understanding modern global politics. Why does China distrust the West so strongly? And more importantly, is it possible for this trust to ever fully return? To understand the origins of this distrust, it is necessary to go back to the early 19th century. At that time, China was governed by the Qing dynasty, one of the most powerful empires in the world. For centuries, China viewed itself as a central civilization with a stable political system, a strong economy, and a sophisticated cultural tradition. Foreign trade existed, but it was tightly controlled by the Chinese government. European powers, particularly the United Kingdom, wanted greater access to Chinese markets. However, China limited trade and showed little interest in many European goods. This created a significant trade imbalance, as Europe was purchasing large quantities of Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain. In response, British traders began exporting opium produced in British India to China. The widespread availability of opium quickly led to a severe addiction crisis among the Chinese population. When Chinese authorities attempted to suppress the drug trade and confiscated large quantities of opium, Britain responded militarily. This conflict became known as the First Opium War, which began in 1839. China was ultimately defeated by the technologically superior British Navy. The war ended with the Treaty of Nanking in 1842, which forced China to open several ports to foreign trade, pay large reparations, and cede control of Hong Kong to Britain. For China, this marked the beginning of a period of national humiliation and loss of sovereignty. Following the first defeat, China entered a long period of political weakness and foreign intervention that Chinese historians refer to as the Century of Humiliation. During this time, several Western nations and regional powers forced China into unequal treaties that limited its sovereignty and expanded foreign control over Chinese territory and trade. Another conflict soon erupted in 1856, known as the Second Opium War. This time, France joined the United Kingdom in military action against China. Western forces eventually advanced toward Beijing, where they looted and destroyed the magnificent Old Summer Palace, one of the most treasured imperial complexes in Chinese history. The destruction of this cultural site became a powerful symbol of foreign aggression in Chinese historical memory. At the same time, other powers began exploiting China's weakness. Russia acquired vast territories along China's northern border. Germany established colonial concessions, while Japan defeated China in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895. By the end of the 19th century, China was divided into spheres of influence controlled by foreign powers, each exercising significant economic and political influence. For many Chinese historians, this period demonstrated a painful reality. When China was weak, foreign powers took advantage of its vulnerability. By the turn of the 20th century, resentment toward foreign influence had reached a boiling point. A nationalist uprising known as the Boxer Rebellion emerged in 1900. The movement targeted foreign diplomats, missionaries, and Chinese Christians, whom many rebels believed represented outside domination. The rebellion quickly escalated into an international crisis. In response, a coalition known as the Eight-Nation Alliance launched a military intervention to suppress the uprising. The alliance included powerful nations such as the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia, and Japan. The Allied forces eventually captured Beijing and imposed another harsh settlement on China. The resulting agreement forced China to pay enormous reparations and allow foreign troops to remain stationed in the capital. This intervention reinforced the perception among many Chinese that foreign powers were willing to unite militarily to protect their interests within China. In 1949, after years of civil war and political turmoil, the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, established the People's Republic of China. The new government framed its victory as the final end of the Century of Humiliation and the beginning of a new era of national sovereignty. However, relations with Western nations remained tense. The United States refused to recognize the new communist government and instead supported the rival administration in Taiwan, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Soon afterward, China and the United States found themselves on opposing sides of the Korean War. These events deepened China's suspicion that Western powers were attempting to contain its political and strategic influence. In the 21st century, tensions between China and Western countries have taken on new forms. China's rapid economic development has transformed it into one of the most powerful economies in the world. This rise has inevitably created strategic competition with established powers. Recent disputes have focused on trade policies, technological development, and security concerns. For example, the United States imposed restrictions and sanctions on major Chinese technology companies such as Huawei, arguing that they pose potential national security risks. China, however, views many of these measures as attempts to slow its technological progress and economic growth. Another significant source of tension involves Taiwan, which China considers part of its sovereign territory. Western political and military support for Taiwan is often interpreted by Beijing as interference in its internal affairs. One of the most important factors shaping China's worldview is the strong role of historical memory. The narrative of the Century of Humiliation is widely taught in Chinese schools and emphasized in museums, documentaries, and national commemorations. These historical experiences are presented not simply as distant events, but as lessons about the dangers of national weakness. As a result, modern Chinese leaders often emphasize the importance of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national strength. These priorities are closely linked to historical experiences in which foreign powers imposed unequal treaties and exercised influence over Chinese affairs. Despite political tensions, China and Western countries remain deeply interconnected through global trade, financial systems, and international institutions. Cooperation continues in areas such as climate change, global health, and economic development. Nevertheless, the shadow of history still shapes perceptions on both sides. For China, the past serves as a constant reminder of a time when the country was vulnerable to foreign pressure and intervention. This historical memory contributes to a cautious and sometimes skeptical approach toward Western intentions. Whether trust between China and the Western world can fully recover remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that understanding the historical experiences that shaped China's perspective is essential for understanding the geopolitical dynamics of the modern world.